to start. So when I talk about natural magnetism, right? I think it's important because, I know there's a lot out there which is really useful and not creating a judgment here where people will say, have these affirmations, affirm, positive thinking, have the intentions and you're going to manifest it. That book, I can't remember the name of the book now. The Secret, yes. I have worked with one of the people who talk about that, Lee Brower, and he talks about the Gratitude Rock. And it's a great book. And when we are in this state, when we're naturally magnetic, then that all works, right? Because you have that intention from your heart. So this is basically our ideal state. Like when we come into the world, this is ideally where we want to be, what we look like. So I'll just describe this a little bit. So we have ourselves here, we have our aura, and forgive me, I'm not a drawer, I'm not an artist, but I'm doing my best, and where it all comes from is your heart, right? Our heart is it's like the electromagnetic. We know that it has an electromagnetic field, and it's so important, that we have our heart clear and open, right? And I put God here because God is in our heart. God is within, right? He's not out there, it's within. So when we have that connection and we have that openness and we have these positive feelings, right? Love, amor, hope, gratitude, faith and trusting, accepting that you're worthy, right? That you're worthy. You know that you're worthy as a child of God, right? And you're sending that out, right? Then these are the types of things that are attracted to you naturally, right? These states, peace, harmony, you're at the right place at the right time, love, the right relationships, right? When I say love, it's like you're receiving that, you're receiving that support, and the people that come into your life, the partner that you have, in your family, all of that, there's that harmony and love. Abundance in all sense, the flow of money that you need and the job that you want and the types of opportunities that you're creating, right? So this is the ideal state, and I have, we also have our chakras, right, that are aligned. So I'm trying to draw here that you're open to receiving, right, but yet you're still grounded, right? And this is our natural state. And when you practice some of the techniques that are in The Secret, right, that really works when you look like this, right, when this is your state. But often what happens, and I see this, and this was true for me when I started this journey, right, this is what it looks like. So no matter what, right, like you're like, you really want to manifest this, but it's going back to your heart. It's what I'm drawing here. It's like you've got barbs. It's like you're protecting your heart because you received hurt and pain at some point, right? Or you don't want to get hurt again, and you don't have that connection, or maybe even that self-love or that connection to God, right? Because your heart is closed, and that's where people start to feel like they're alone or separate, right? And again, this was me when I first started this. When I had my first experience of a spiritual healing with my teacher, this was like 13 years ago. I couldn't understand what was going on. Like I knew Lee Brower, right? And I'm doing The Secret, and it was like everything was going wrong, it seemed, despite my best intentions. It wasn't working for me. And at that time, I was in big time denial, like about this that I didn't love myself enough, or that I didn't have a connection. I was actually quite defensive about it. Like, I love myself because I'm working out and I read and I eat healthy, I do all these good things, which is good. But I really didn't have that because my heart was closed, right? It was closed. I had been hurt, at that time, I'd gone through a divorce and all of that, and I was like, what is going on? nothing is going my way. It feels like I have bad luck, right? So it really started with this state here. And so backing it up a little bit is that what happens is we have this electromagnetic field around us, you know, that with our heart, but the earth has an electromagnetic field. And there's changes, you know, you can look this up and read it on NASA or space, but there's constant changes and fluxes in the electromagnetic field. You know, that's where you read about solar flares happening, and certain parts of the world, certain countries will lose power. The power grid goes out, and that has an impact on us as well, right? And what happens is that we're losing energy, like we lose some of our own energy through those changes. So that weakens our own energy field, our aura. So that creates breaks, which makes us susceptible, like we're not 100% strength. And this makes us susceptible to what we call leech attachments. These are spirit, you know, low consciousness spirits who haven't gone to the light, and they want to continue to live their negative human tendencies. And so they are looking for food, you know, and we're the food, right? And they're feeding off of those negative emotions, right? So this is not to say to not feel any negative emotions. I think it's really important when you have them to feel them and let them go, but let them go. Don't hold on to them. But when, like, if you have a situation like intense sadness or grieving, you're a little bit more susceptible to all of a sudden now, okay, this leech is gonna attach onto you. And now there's manipulation happening because they want more of that, right? So that's where people start to sense like, oh, there's a change in my personality or a change in my energy. I have a lower energy or higher energy sometimes, or suddenly I'm wanting to eat junk food all the time or drink more. Or I've heard people say like, I was dreaming that I was smoking and I never smoked before, and I really want to, you know, it's like I'm dreaming about smoking cigarettes. Well, maybe you might have some of this influence happening. So these states, you know, when your heart is closed with these emotions of anger, hurt, victim, you know, you're bringing this kind of situation in bad luck, drama. You're stuck, and that's the big one for a lot of people, is that they feel stuck, like with, and that was true for me too, like can't really move forward, and that the situations that I have are repeating. It's like I might be changing the people, you know, there might be different people, but it's like a similar outcome. It's like, oh my gosh, I just had I left one relationship and now I'm in another, and it's like the same thing is happening. You know, even though it started off great, or, you know, I let that friend go and now the people around me, it's like the same types of negative situations are occurring over and over again, so you get stuck in these negative patterns. So, how do we get back, right? How do we get back to this state? Because this is all our natural state, right? And this is where we want to be, and this is the natural magnetism that we have. It really requires us to be humble, you know, in my case, and to recognize, okay, where might I have my heart closed? Where might I be holding on to something and not letting go? You know, I might be loving in my actions, but I'm still holding on. So the big thing, and you know, you'll hear me say this over and over again if you ever, you know, work with me, is to love yourself, forgive yourself, everyone who has hurt you, right? It's just all about forgiveness. Not just now in this present time, but even in the past. You know, things that you might not even be aware of. Has anyone read Edgar Cayce? Are you familiar with Edgar Cayce? Anyone?
Yeah, I know of him, but I haven't read his books.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. For me, I came upon his, it's called Edgar Cayce on family karma. And because I had a drama breaks up, family members not talking to each other. My parents got divorced. You know, there was one side of the family didn't want to see the other side of the family. You know, and I mean, I was on my own at a very young age. I was 16 on my own and trying to figure this all out. And so I came across that, and Edgar Casey, he talks about not just in the family, but any type of relationship that you have. If you're finding that there's a difficult situation, but you mostly will find it in a family, that it's really a gift, right? That there is some past life situation where in another part on the timeline that we are on, you know, because we pass on, and I mean, I believe we don't just die and that's it. You know, there's something else. You know, what that is a whole other topic. But that this is an opportunity to close that circle with that person. That even if you feel that I never did anything to this person, why are they behaving like this towards me? You know, why is it always so difficult? That this is really an opportunity to forgive and to recognize that maybe at some point I did something to hurt this person really badly, and this is the situation. So I always say, you know, forgive, ask for forgiveness as well from the soul of those people, whether it's now or past, you know, and to forgive yourself so that you're not perpetuating this cycle, you know, and to love God and talk to God. You know, that first picture that I drew with your heart, that God is inside, God is within each of us, right? We are part of that light. We are born of that light. That's our birthright, you know. So to love yourself is really to love God. It's like a continuous circle. The more that you love God, the more you love yourself. And that just continues to expand. And you recognize that we're not separate. We are all one and part of that light. So when we talk about manifesting your heart's desires, if you can do that, you know, manifesting with that unconditional love and expansion and recognition that I'm always in the right place at the right time, and I have God within, then anything is possible, right? And that is where your strength comes from, right? And so that's going to be your, you know, to manifest with God, I think is just so powerful. Of course, a spiritual healing or cleansing is going to help, right? It's going to help with this situation. And that's the work that I do, is, you know, to help clear this, the heart, what gets stored. So what happens, what I see is people will store these emotions in their physical heart, okay? But then that impacts the spiritual and the emotional heart. And sometimes it's not just what's from this lifetime, right? There's sometimes in the heart or in the chakras, especially in the throat area, you know, a lot of people will feel like they're kind of choking, or they can't talk or express themselves or have their voice. And that's because there's traumas that get stored in your cellular memory from an earlier time in your life, or even a past lifetime situation. So to clear that darkness, that immediately opens up, right? Because if you're storing that, that's going to block you. So no matter what else you're doing to manifest, if you have those blocks, it's going to stop you, right? So to help have support with the spiritual cleansing to remove that will just accelerate the process, right? And also this leech attachment, right? That's like the number one thing with the spiritual cleanse, is to remove anything that's in your energy field that's not of God's will, that's not meant for you. So that's that. And then maintaining a good attitude, right? Maintaining a good attitude, of course, the secret talks about that, right? To always speak the positive language, right? To not give into the negative, right? Like to, you know, just check yourself. and think about, okay, how are you phrasing something, right? Like, okay, it's raining, right? It's like, thank goodness it's raining, because we've been in a drought for so long, right? It'd be great to not have the drought situation anymore. Yes, it can be dangerous driving, but it's also a blessing for us. You know, so many people I know in Mexico City, they're out of water. Like there's a town near Mexico City, their reservoir is at 0. It's like, what are you gonna do? It's only gonna get drier, so thank God for that. So just be aware of how you're speaking and also what you're saying to yourself, how you talk to yourself. The most important thing is when you wake up and you know, look in the mirror, the first thing, I love myself, you know, embrace yourself. And Louise Hay, you know, I'm sure she's like amazing, I love her. She has some great, you can just even go on YouTube, and the mirror work that she does is just awesome, and I highly recommend that, you know, because it will feel uncomfortable if it's not something that you do, but it gets easier, and I'm talking from experience, because when I started practicing that, I'm like, oh, I kind of feel cringy, but it's like, oh yeah, now I love myself, you know, kiss myself, you know, and then I, you know, go on with my day, and you'll notice, like, it didn't happen right away, but I noticed it does make a difference when you do that. So that's, I mean, I only have 20 minutes for this talk, so that's why I'm like, okay, I'm trying to keep it really condensed. But I want to just open it up to you to, you know, see if you have any questions or comments, you know, anything.
I kind of had something happen to me, like I was on a trip and I got back from the trip and something was wrong. And so I have a teacher as well, and I was like, there's something wrong. And we did all these things and it just wasn't going away. It was bad. And I just didn't feel myself crying and all these things. And I felt blocked. I would use the word blocked, right? And
Yeah.
so I pulled some cards for myself and I'm like, it was like good. And then I got home and I'm like, I still feel bad. And so I did my angel cards and I'm like, it just keeps telling me things, but I'm like, but I can't get there. So I turned on this music, I found this like spiritual music that was brand new to me, and it was like Jesus, and like it was like for like healing. So I did that, and I just spoke to myself, oh my God, I don't know what's wrong. I can't, like I feel like I can't breathe, I can't function, like there's something wrong, please like help me. And so I'm praying. All of a sudden I got sick, like nauseated, like I felt sick to my stomach. I was like, oh my God, and I was like, I don't have anything at home, I have a nurse. So I was like, okay, tea, I'll drink some tea. And it eventually went away. When I woke up the next day, I was fine. It was gone. So there is something to that. There was something that had attached itself to me somewhere on that trip, and I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And now I'm myself again.
Yes.
So I'm a believer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I called God, and when I did, that was what happened.
That is so beautiful. So I love that. That is such a great, so we all have, so you just made me think to say about the guidance, the protection that we have, right? That at any moment that you're feeling like, okay, when you're going on a trip, okay, or you're going out, like, or even just driving in the car, you know, practice is always, I always call on my guard. We all have a guardian angel, right? That has been assigned to us by God. Like, we have that beautiful protection. And to just have a relationship with your guardian angel and ask, you know, please protect me, you know, and be with me, guide me, you know, on this trip from anything that's going to come to me from behind or, you know, something unexpected. And that you knew to just tune in and ask for that healing is really beautiful.
I have a question that I've seen kind of just more of things from a societal perspective.
Yes.
So let's say, you know, two people are going on a date. The way I view things is a lot of people will approach the date of, here's my list and you have to prove to me this is what is required for me to love you, right? Rather than going into a date saying, how can I love this person, right? So how can we change that mindset of having to qualify someone right away to, starting at a place of love?
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, I know, it's like sometimes you feel like it's like a job interview in a way. I think it's important to have like a list for yourself, right? To know like, okay, I'll tell you, I have known many people and I did it myself to get clear about what is it that I'm looking for, what's important to me. But that's not something I'm sharing with the person. It's more for myself to get clear. And what I realized through that was when I read that list, I'm like, that's me. Like, I was like, that's all the things that are me. So it was like, okay, this is actually really more of an exercise in self-love. I think that in those situations, I mean, that's probably not the person you want to be with, right? Because you're a very spiritual person and you're coming from the heart, right? So, if that's the mindset of that person, they have probably a lot more spiritual growth to go from, right? And I think we all know we have an intuition of God, like when we meet someone, is this someone who's like good for me, or someone, for me, I feel like if my heart is beating really fast, and when I was younger, like in my 20s, I'd be like, oh, my heart's beating really fast. Oh, this is a good thing. I love it. Oh, I'm on this roller coaster. Oh my gosh, why am I going through? Okay, no, but that's not what you want. For me, that's not what you want to be feeling. It has to be like that nice, centered, grounded feeling of that person being in alignment with you, right? And you have so much to offer, right? And I think that's also knowing, like, I know my worth, and I don't want to be in a job interview for this. And I respect you for what you want, but I don't know that I'm going to be the right person for that if it's this checklist. Yeah. And I don't know how do you change that? We change that one person at a time, right? Through more spiritual growth and awareness. And what I've noticed is that more and more people are awakening, right? But there is a dominant consciousness out there, right? And particularly, with social media, there's a lot of negative influence, and we have to, that's another thing, going back to this picture, right? I didn't put that on there, but we have this constant bombardment, right, of electromagnetic energy just coming from the planet, from our devices, which are awesome, but it's having an impact on our energy field, right? And then there's also, that manipulation that's out there too, right? And there's what I call it a negative manipulator. People might read a book, or they're following, an influencer, and it's like, oh, this is the thing to do, and like everybody's doing that now, but they're not really. That's where I think it's so important for everyone to use your internal guidance, right? Your inner guidance of, okay, how does this feel? My intuition. Going back to your heart, the heart here, if your heart's closed, you've cut off your connection, that signal, to God. You might be getting the messages like, okay, this isn't good for me, but you do it anyway because you're going with the flow and with the dominant consciousness. So I think that's what I just said, that's what we're dealing with. Yeah. Yes.
So what's the actual work that you do?
Yeah, so I do spiritual cleansing and healing and home clearing, and I'm working